Steve Witkoff is Donald Trump's chief negotiator when it comes to the Ukraine war and the Gaza genocide. So he should, in theory, have a lot on his plate. A lot of lives depend on him doing his job properly. So if he was given one wish, what would it be?
And there's only one thing I wish for, that Nobel Committee finally gets its act together and realizes that you are the single finest candidate since the this Nobel Award was ever talked about to receive that reward. Beyond your success is game-changing out in the world today. And I hope everybody one day wakes up and realizes that.
That's right. There's only one thing Steve Witkoff wishes for. It's not peace and justice in Ukraine. It's not an end to the famine in Gaza, but rather that his boss gets a Nobel Peace Prize. And indeed, he said he would be the finest candidate for the prize ever since it was talked about. Now, what talked about means is somewhat ambiguous. The award's been around for 100 years or so. People who've won the award in the past include Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King. So there is some tough competition to be the most qualified candidate ever to get a Nobel Peace Prize. Also, I love those images where you sort of Donald Trump gets his entire cabinet to sit around a table and just shower more and more ridiculous praise on him, sort of round nose in front of the whole nation and the whole world, in fact. What's interesting, though, looking through sort of the past winners of the Nobel Peace Prize, as I was doing on Wikipedia today, is that it's not entirely implausible, I think, that Trump could get the prize if he can agree some kind of ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine. Now, of course, this would be shocking because he's completely amoral, but so were some previous victors. So in 1973, Henry Kissinger was awarded the prize for negotiating a ceasefire in Vietnam. Of course, before that ceasefire agreement, Kissinger had authorized secret illegal US bombings in Cambodia and Laos to disrupt North Vietnamese supply lines. Between 50,000 and 150,000 civilians are estimated to have died in those bombings. Historians argue that destabilization helped fuel the rise of the Khmer Rouge, who killed 2 million. Right, so you're sort of saying the Americans, for agreeing a ceasefire, can get rewarded, even though it was their bombs, their napalm, that killed so many civilians. Lee Duc Tho, who was jointly awarded the prize, so from the North Vietnamese side, he declined to accept it, potentially because he didn't want to win it alongside Henry Kissinger, I'm not sure. 5 years later, the award was jointly awarded to Egyptian President Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Begin for negotiating peace between the two nations. Again, the peace deal was and remains incredibly controversial as it exchanged land for peace without any promise of justice for Palestinians. So this was basically Egypt saying, "Okay, we'll treat you okay, Israel. We're over the Palestinian question." Sadat was incredibly unpopular in Egypt for having signed that deal. He ended up getting assassinated, basically, for having signed that deal. And on the Israeli side, before becoming prime minister, Begin led the Irgun, which is a Zionist paramilitary group responsible for attacks like the Deir Yassin massacre, in which at least 107 Palestinian Arab villagers were killed. Even the 1993 award, when Nelson Mandela got the prize, was controversial as he shared it with de Klerk, who, before seeing the writing on the wall and helping to dismantle apartheid, had enforced it. So, Barry, two questions for you. One, do you agree with Witkoff? Is Donald Trump the most qualified candidate ever for the Nobel Peace Prize? And I suppose more seriously, perhaps, can you actually see him being awarded it?
Who else, Michael? Where's the competition? He's the greatest peacemaker of our time. By the way, they should have just packed it up after they gave it to Henry Kissinger. You know, I can't believe it's still going. Look, he's desperate for it. He was desperate for it in his first term, and he's desperate for it now. He keeps talking about what a peacemaker he is. You know, we can go all the way back to the Abraham Accords and, you know, him trumpeting the fact that he sat down with Kim Jong-un, and he is desperate for this prize. I think it's been a sort of a through line of his two terms in office. Could he win it? I mean, well, I don't. Okay, so look, there are some terrible people who've won it before. And I think that even Barack Obama, you know what? When did Obama win it? He won it 8 months into his first term, I think. And he'd been nominated after just 2 weeks. And that was a total nonsense too. I mean, he essentially got it for making one speech, one touchy-feely speech in Cairo. And I do sometimes wonder if Trump wants it because Obama got it. There was another horrible recent one, or controversial recent one, which was the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, got it in 2019. Again, only about a year into his term, just over a year, I think. And then, Ethiopia exploded into a civil war in which his forces were found to have committed all kinds of atrocities, which he denied all the way through. And now, he's gone down in history as a Nobel Peace Prize winner. I suspect, though, that the Nobel Committee perhaps understand how toxic this would be for them, and what a massive, massive controversy it would be. I think they're smart enough to get that. And the other thing is, there was a piece reported a while back. I want to say it was in the Washington Post, where they said that 3 out of the 5 members of the committee have actually criticized him publicly. So that's a majority against. Maybe they would certainly look very hypocritical if they awarded it to him. So look, stranger things have happened. But Michael, if we're going to make a bet, I'm going to bet no.
Maybe a more provocative question. So does the fact that someone like Henry Kissinger won it discredit it, or is the genius of the Nobel Peace Prize that it is somewhat amoral? So it's sort of saying, whoever you are, if you make peace, you can have this kind of meaningless prize, this sort of meaningless thing to sit on your shelf. So it's sort of, so I suppose de Klerk is a good example, right? Where it's sort of like, instead of this award, sort of, I'm not saying he ended apartheid because he wanted to win the Nobel Peace Prize, but the fact that sort of that's a little perk of admitting defeat, I suppose, in his case, is that a good thing where they sort of say, look, let's let bygones be bygones for the purposes of this award. If you have agreed some kind of peaceful outcome to any kind of conflict, you can win this award. And then I suppose Donald Trump is the most obvious example of where that seems to be having some impact. Like it does seem like he is more keen to bring about peace between Russia and Ukraine. Not that I think he's got particularly great ideas about it, but it's better that he wants that than he wants war, for the sake of it. So maybe sort of having this award ceremony which says, we don't care who you are, what you've done. If you come to some peace agreement, we'll reward you. There's something kind of, I suppose, realist about it, in saying, let's not be highly strung about who we can or cannot celebrate. Peace is peace, and it's good.
I guess I see that argument. No, I do. I get what you're saying. It kind of reminds me of, the Time Person of the Year, where, they've put some sort of atrocious people on the cover, but I guess on the proviso that they've been, a really big newsmaker that year, somebody who's had, a very significant impact in the world that year. So yeah, maybe. But if there is peace in between Russia and Ukraine, shouldn't it be? God, that's worse. I was going to say, shouldn't it be Putin? Shouldn't it be Putin and Zelensky who get it? I don't know, Michael. You're putting me on the fence here, but no, I still don't want him to get it, and I still don't think he will get it. Can you give it to somebody based on one conflict, right? Because if you look at Trump's impact on other conflicts, right? Like, could we award Trump the Nobel Peace Prize for being involved in brokering peace between Ukraine and Russia, while also, being lockstep with Israel in a genocide in Gaza? Do you only evaluate the person based on one achievement, or do you evaluate them sort of in the round? Because if we're evaluating him in the round, then he certainly doesn't deserve the prize.
Well, I suppose the argument I was making is that it seems that it specifically doesn't consider them in the round because Henry Kissinger won it. So he won it for coming to that ceasefire deal with the North Vietnamese, even though, again, they kind of did it because the writing was on the wall. But it was 1973. That's the same year, wasn't it, that the Americans backed the overthrow of Allende in Chile. So sort of the same year that he went to pick up this award, I think he was instrumental in backing the overthrow of a democratic government in Chile. I mean, maybe the realist argument, the Nobel Peace Prize committee should have said, Kissinger, you can have this as long as you you pull back the CIA from overthrowing that democratic
Yeah.
government in
We'll
Chile.
give you a
Maybe
little
they could be a bit
bauble.
more ambitious.
But do you know what I think? Like, there's also part of me that thinks that the more we talk about this, the more it feels like the prize is a bit of a nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, the prize is a bit of a nonsense, but maybe it does more good than harm. I suppose that's the suggestion I'm maybe provocatively making. Who knows? I think the fact that Donald Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize is good. Not that I think he should win it, but I think the fact that he
Yeah,
wants it is better than if he was angling for. I mean, Time Person of the Year, the incentives for that are terrible because all you have to do is do something dramatic. So Hitler was the Time Person of the Year
I know.
because it was a big deal. Um,
Yeah.
whereas I think it's better to incentivize people to make some kind of peace deal, however shoddy, than to just be the biggest deal one can possibly be.
I mean, he's very distracted by shiny things and he wants shiny things. And I guess if the shiny thing he wants more than any other shiny thing is the Nobel Peace Prize, then yeah, that's good.